Halo 3 is regarded as one of the best shooter titles of all time, and is a predominant favorite among many Halo fans since the title saw success on levels higher than its two predecessors. The game features what was once the largest sandbox in the franchise, with more weapons and vehicles than ever before. With the inclusions of systems like dual wielding and equipment, Halo 3 also delivered one of the most varied and complex Halo gameplay experiences of its time. Too bad for us, this intricate and deep-reaching sandbox can only really be enjoyed fully in one playlist: Auto Slayer. And what's even worse is that this is all the circumstance of one of Halo's most iconic weapons, the battle rifle. I'm the Home Slice Ascend Hyperion, and in today's video, we're going to explore one of Halo's great under-discussed topics: the true, crushing consequences of the precision weapon meta. We'll break down how Bungie's reliance on the single gun dominant system created a violent disparity in the weapon sandbox, and while conditions change from game to game, we'll focus on how Halo 3 stands as a great visual for what happens when you release players from the confines of meta. Be sure to subscribe for more fresh-baked Halo content. Make sure you don't miss my viewer question at the end, and let's get this started. The precision weapon meta has been noted several times on this channel. We've discussed how it punished dual-wieldable weapons, and we covered its influence in the fall and rise of the Magnum. The precision weapon meta was one of the most defining features of the first three Halo titles, but I think because it's so commonplace in the Halo experience, players that entered the franchise under the reign of the BR meta haven't really given much thought to just how constrictive this system was. In fact, it seems to me that people were so used to the restrictions of the old meta that when Halo 5 opened up the sandbox to high universal weapon validity, people kind of freaked out. Now, that's a discussion for a different day though. Today, we're going to focus on Halo 3 and how it gives us a clear picture of the precision weapon meta, and the best way to do that is to open up Auto Slayer. The first big thing to understand is that the weapons players are loaded out with have a huge effect on how people play the game. And that's not a quote or speculation of mine, that's from Bungie themselves. Imagine if you always spawned with a sniper, or even if your mag was replaced by a mauler by default. It would greatly alter how people played all the time. And the first issue we encounter revolves around this idea. We don't need to necessarily swap in power weapons to see a major change in playstyle. All we have to do is let players spawn with the BR. You see, while the BR itself is classified as a loadout weapon, the same as an AR or a Magnum, the BR is in a different performance category, way above the other two. The BR is able to deal damage rapidly, consistently, both up close and from a fair distance away, and in Halo, that's a big deal. Weapon range alone is a big divider between weapons in Halo, but the fact that the BR retains high killing potential across two range classes makes it a dangerous tool to start off with. Many of the loadout weapons are limited to close range fights, and the BR breaks that limit by opening up mid-range kills with long-range picks and peppers. And I gotta take a second to say that while it's crucial that the BR earns kills at mid-range, it's just as crucial that it can deal damage at long range. Players will act on their damage ranges. If they can deal and receive damage at high range, they will interact at high range. We talked about this when we discussed why Blood Gulch was phased out of newer Halo games. And by the way, I'm gonna keep saying the BR, but just understand much of what I'm saying for the BR can be applied to the carbine as well. After all, it's the precision weapon meta. So what? The BR is a good gun. What does it matter? Well, in a vacuum, I guess it means nothing. But the BR exists in an active sandbox, full of various weapons and gimmicks. The second issue crawls forward as we start to compare the BR to not only weapons in the loadout class, but in the utility and power weapon classes as well. The combat strength retained by the BR and its influence over player fight distance extends its effects into the utility and power weapons too. Both classes of gun are subject to conforming to the limitations of range class, so while guns like the Mauler or Plasma Pistol might be great ways to shake up close range fights, a player with a BR doesn't even need to enter that fight at that range. There's even many instances with something like a rocket launcher, where it can be easily bested by a BR at the right ranges. The BR is constantly interfering with the prescribed uses of the other weapons in the sandbox, and because of that, it directly modifies how Halo is played when it is a loadout weapon. When we pop up in Auto Slayer though, the story is very different. You see, the AR and Magnum are the notorious underperformers in the presence of the BR, but without it, the two guns become competent performers in the sandbox, at least as starting weapons, like they should. But the reason why Auto Slayer is so much better than Precision Slayer is because the AR Magnum starts entices players into doing something very special: trading up. While you can rock the AR and Mag if you want, Auto Slayer has the unique position of starting players in a lower position of killing potential, and because of that, players are naturally inclined to seek out ways to increase their damage output. It's right here where utility weapons and even the lowest tier power weapons start to see more action than ever, as the damage styles and potentials of those weapons are now no longer in contest with the BR, which as a loadout weapon could best them in several key ways. Auto Slayer allows some of the most complex weapon clashes you can get in Halo organically, and the best part is that this combat motif is universal. If you fired up Auto Slayer right now, you'd be trading up your AR or Mag for better or even just different functioning weapons. I like to trade my AR for the Brute Shot, and then I'd pocket my Magnum for cleanups, or I guess I could hold on to the AR and use it for peppering crowds. I found myself dual wielding a lot, since I no longer had to worry about if each player was going to outrange me. I even started combining wacky things just to up my damage potential. With the BR out of the initial picture, fights are forced to be much more close together, which widens the pool of weapons that can actually participate in fights. It felt strange to be getting actual kills with the AR, but it was a normal means of combat. But what's most interesting to me is how weapons like the BR and Carbine then slot into the Auto Slayer experience as pickup weapons. In many ways, they retain their old abilities, like discussed earlier, but as pickups, those effects are limited to when they're in play. It's not a constant warping of the sandbox. If you need to wrap it all up with a bow, think about it like this. When you start with an AR, you're free to use that to get kills, but you are able to easily and readily trade up or trade out with virtually any other weapon in the sandbox to either increase your damage potential or change your damage output style. Many times you're doing both at the same time. This makes the pyramid of power much wider at the base and creates a huge melting pot for player interactions. But when you start with a BR, you're being instantly elevated above a huge amount of the sandbox in terms of damage potential and type. There are far fewer guns to trade up or trade out with. Even those close to the BR on the pyramid start to seem less appealing because they're not that far away potentially from what your BR can do. The removal of the BR as a loadout weapon is healthy for the sandbox, and brings a huge variety of fight scenarios and weapon combos along with it. But don't get me wrong, I understand the BR has its applications. Truthfully, for creating a balanced and more competitive experience, BR starts 100% makes more sense. This video isn't about saying that BR is bad or awful or terrible for Halo. No. But if you want an environment where each part of the Halo sandbox can thrive and see action, Well, it's time to turn off Precision Slayer, and it's time to queue up into Auto Slayer. So here's your viewer question. Is the BR too strong, or are the other weapons too weak? Let me know in the comments below. Drop your general ideas about this topic in the comments as well. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.